Hey guys, how's your day been? Yeah, mine's been pretty chill. Nothing too eventful happened. Hung out, watched some league games. I mean, IG beat KT and G2 beat RNG, but it's really nothing that exciting.
There's the engage. Jess enters onto the cannon creep, delivers a perfect play. GA,
Uzi's down!
Up. Boy, Uzi down! It's all on Xiaohu! Xiaohu's running for it! Burks has found him! Burks goes golden with the hourglass. They may have just done it!
G2 have just dismantled RNG and they're gonna make their way to the semi-finals!
G2 Esports will find another kill, will tear open the base, and Busan is cheering and screaming and crying! The underdogs reign supreme at Worlds 2018 when expectations were at their lowest. The G2 dynasty will be defined by taking down RNG.
Both IG beating KT and RNG losing to G2 are really exciting and interesting because they seem like gigantic upsets. I think most people are more surprised by G2 taking down RNG because, let's face it, no one has a lot of faith in Europe most of the time, and IG versus KT was projected as a possible final. Even though I predicted IG versus KT would be closer, it was more likely to go 4 or 5 games than G2 versus RNG from my perspective. I honestly feel like IG beating KT is more of an upset because I don't think IG are a reliable team. I mean, I don't think KT are either, but it's one of those things where it's like you see them both doing kind of crazy things, but in the end it makes sense that the team that is a little bit more experienced, has a little bit better team play, will make it work a little bit better. Whereas for G2 and RNG, if you look at these teams without reading nameplates at all, you would think that G2 has a really good shot of beating a team that is playing like RNG, that is going through the bracket stage playing these double tank sort of compositions. However, obviously RNG showed slight adaptation at the end of group stage and started playing a little bit more high damage threat comps. Even so, the way G2 are playing out should be pretty favored against them. We've seen the Gen G game versus RNG, which was the closest game of the first round in the group stage. And it wouldn't be that weird for G2 to try to replicate something like that since they've been trying to do it the entire time. So from that perspective, it's G2 beating RNG is less of an upset stylistically. However, it still seemed more likely that RNG would stomp G2 just because of how you look at the team when the player names aren't covered. That's exactly why I'm here to talk to you today, because I feel like that narrative and that arc obviously did a bit of injustice to Hjarnan and Wadded, and we want to talk a little bit about how important they are to G2's compositions and to the way that G2 likes to play the game, because in order to make a really good 1-3-1 work, it's really not just about your top laner and your mid laner. It's really not just about the side lanes. You have to have a really strong, stable midsection. That's where I saw G2 potentially falling over, but their drafts in terms of how to get a good stable midsection were strong, and they had a good approach overall relative to RNG in terms of executing it. And I wanted to first of all applaud that, talk about why G2's Tahm Kench is so important and why 2 of their 3 wins today came with the Tahm Kench, but then also kind of pull it back a little bit and say, you know, good job Hjarnan and Wadded, you made it work without either Heimer or Tahm Kench, and there are a couple of extra steps you had to take, but those should definitely be recognized, and G2 not only beat the blue side curse of the best of 5, but they beat the projected Tahm Kench curse, which they'd only really done against a team like Fangbu Buffalo. Without further ado, let's just go ahead and unbench that Kench. So obviously the really easy things that Tahm Kench provides, as you can see on the screen, if you're against a very aggressive bottom lane, which G2 have occasionally struggled against, the Devour provides a good ability to deal with any type of unwarranted aggression. It also provides a lot of opportunities for wasting junglers and or opposing mid laners time when you're going to be against a team that likes to really focus the bottom lane like Royal Never Give Up. Obviously, G2 is a team that would rather have their jungler being around the top side, but here you see G2 actually playing super defensively because they know how important their bottom lane really is to making sure that they secure a really good advantage and a really good lead. Because of the way G2 have this draft set up, if RNG don't force anything around bot side, then G2 solo winners will get ahead anyway. Here, they get pushed even further behind because obviously Xiaohu is roaming down to try to force on Gragas Tom Kench, and Perks is able to harass him enough when he comes back to lane that he at least is denied a cannon. But honestly, that isn't even close to the most important thing that Tom Kench provides for G2. Here, RNG push a little bit more aggressively and a little bit further on the wave, get priority, deny G2's ability to approach. That gives Ming the opportunity to go mid and try to influence the skirmish that's currently occurring. However, because Tom Kench has ultimate, if Hjarnan answers the push, Wadid can still use the Abyssal Voyage and answer the fight as well, so that Ming might get tempo advantage, G2 can correct it. Fun, but this is all really small incidental things that if you've played any League of Legends, you probably kind of already understand on a basic level. There are a lot of more intricacies in the Tom Kench because obviously with his passive, he's actually a really good lane bully. He's also really hard to kill himself because of the gray health and the denial therein. So not only does he save his AD carry from dives and make teams waste a lot of time if they're going bottom lane, but he's also really difficult to trade against. He's also really annoying to try to kill, and just the fact that if you swap or you mess up your swap, he's so ridiculously forgiving that you can ult and then show up in the correct place and match without losing tempo is really, I don't want to say unfair, but you can kind of understand why even though Tom Kench had so many seconds taken off of his EAT, considered by some to be the most OP part of the champion, he's still so ridiculously high priority in pro play. But that, my friends, only covers part of why Tom Kench is so useful for G2, and in general, why G2's midsection kind of needs to be celebrated a little bit, and the work that they generally do within G2's compositions. So here you have, this is a bad draft from RNG. There's really no hiding it. You don't scale particularly well, you don't match in sides, and your team fights doesn't even necessarily perform exceptionally well. On top of that, Shen frankly isn't that good anymore. He doesn't buy Tiamat, he has no hope of answering push. But you still have the option of using Shen to deny things like Akali assassination or anything like that. So that's probably the theory of why Shen was used. You have the idea of Lissandra and Shen interrupting what G2 want to accomplish in a fight, but G2 have really good disengage tools, and just in general make it very difficult for RNG to force the type of fight they want, and this is why we see RNG get a bit desperate here. You have on the top side, UCI was able to push out the wave first and back, and then Hjarnan is now going to back as well. So because UCI backed first, as we've kind of discussed in other videos, RNG have a bit of tempo to make the play. Wadid also doesn't really have Abyssal Voyage up, so they aren't necessarily worried about things like that. You have Shen with TP and his ultimate, so there means to match, things of that nature. Obviously, Wonder is taking this into account. He's roaming up mid because he knows that Shen can match fairly quickly. RNG have to disengage because they don't necessarily have the tempo for them. But why do RNG care so much about this Rift Herald at this time? Obviously, it's nice to be able to take Rift Herald when you can, but they're not going to play for bottom turret, they're not going to play for Mountain Drake, they're not going to play for anything like this because Rift Herald is actually so important to their composition, because without Rift Herald, they are almost never, ever, ever, ever going to take this mid lane turret. This mid lane turret is so important to RNG's composition because of the way that G2's composition wants to work. G2 want to have Hjarnan, Wadid, and Jankos sitting up here in the middle, just chilling, you know, these guys hanging out. And then if RNG want anything to happen, they absolutely have to force mid because they will lose pressure in sides. G2 will just push like maniacs all the way to their base, and then they'll basically have to force on the side lane if they don't do that. If they want to force on a side lane, however, they have to be able to get some kind of pressure, get some kind of vision, because as long as this turret is here, it gives so much passive vision to G2's side that RNG are going to kind of be afraid to even contest this river area or this like kind of little area here for vision at all, which makes it really difficult for them to get a good flank on G2 split pushers. That makes Herald really important because, as we've already seen with the way that the game has played out so far, if you have Hjarnan and Wadded in a lane, you can't really dive Hjarnan and Wadded, and you cannot really outclear Varus's Q once he is approaching level 9. If you add in the fact that we have a Gragas here, you know, the Gragas with the cask, with the ability to clear very effectively with Q as well, you're basically never going to approach the wave at a point once you have 2-item match or an item match from Varus and Kench. So that means if RNG really want to make their composition work, if they want to be able to get any forces whatsoever, this turret is kind of public enemy number 1. Making Rift Herald their most important objective at the moment. As you can see, even though G2's turret is really low, it's very difficult for RNG to kind of commit on this because obviously you have so many all-in tools. So this is the other bad side of this coin. It's just I haven't really sufficiently explained how bad RNG's composition is because I just kind of pointed out the Shen. But you also have Ming, who wants to sort of all in. He does have some disengage options, obviously. But you also have Karsa, who wants to kind of all in. He has the ability to isolate targets and things of that nature, but at the same time, he is committing. When he goes in, he's committing. That means most likely Let Me is committing as well, because Let Me will be ulting on other targets that are committing. Yuzia only has 1E. Xiaohu wants to be able to have an all-in opportunity, even though Xiaohu also has some freedom to disengage. We have a bunch of people going in. That also increases the power of this here ultimate on Gragas, because you can easily isolate, pick someone, get a nice assassination for Akali or Aurelia, and then your really only way to stop this is kind of the Shen ultimate. This also means that perks can extend up really far in this case, because there's no way to punish. Even though RNG have all of this priority on one side, you have the Shen ultimate and you have the Shen TP. G2 now also know that Wadd's teleports up, so if Perkz wants to commit super hard, they have good answers to whatever Perkz wants to do. Perkz can push up really, really hard here. This can be applied to when he's inside, this can be applied to whatever. You have Jankos shadowing him, he's going in, Jankos has the option of disengaging. You have Hjarnan with the ability to go in as well here. They get the pick onto Xiaohu, who really can't be far up at all in this kind of composition, and then you just see kind of how effective the collapse is from G2. Even if they're not able to get priority, even if they're hiding under turret, they can protect their turret forever unless they leave lane, but also be able to collapse onto whatever skirmish, allow G2 the freedom to have their solo laners push up really, really far without losing that much. So cool. Hopefully we understand G2's Tahm Kench priority a little bit more. Also their Gragas priority, also their priority for things like Varus, for things like Jhin that just clear safely and also combo well with the Tahm Kench because you can get catches with them. You can pick when you're flanking. Obviously there are moments in the game where you have Perkz or Wonder pushing up on sides and then both of them collapse. You have Wonder do the ultimate. Obviously there are also moments in the game where this is not executed very well. Hjarnan ulting nothing right in front of him, anyone, but at the same time I think it's really important to understand how G2 are using their midsection to really snowball their side lanes and to make sure that their side lanes are working effectively for them, and how Tahm Kench really facilitates that, and why it's actually so strange that RNG would leave it open in multiple games against them. Okay, it is game 5. Okay, I'm done. I promise. I'm not trying to take that from Mark Zimmerman. He's very much better than me at that. But the important thing to note is that this game, both Heimerdinger and Tahm Kench were banned. So G2 are instead going for the Braum Jhin. I think the Braum Jhin is a good thing because it does a lot of the laning type things that Tahm Kench does. It provides a lot of damage reduction. You can't really engage onto the Braum effectively. they can stay fairly safe under turret and clear effectively. However, at the same time, you have situations where you're not going to get the same kind of tempo advantages out of the Tom Kench, because you can't really get to a point where, okay, Uzi is pushing out the lane and they have priority. I can Tom Kench ultimate and catch up in any kind of mid lane skirmish that Ming tries to influence. So instead, you actually have to be much more proactive towards this kind of bottom lane and make sure that you're helping it get off the ground, so that Wadded actually is the one getting priority to influence mid, because your LeBlanc kind of has to snowball in order to be able to deal with Xiaohu at all in side lanes in the mid lane game. Okay, so G2 go ahead and instigate this gank on UZI. UZI actually plays this not awfully in terms of being able to 1v3. Wadded blocks the Lantern, and G2 come away with first blood, able to use the heal, and he goes down all the way to 2 HP as far as I am aware. The thing about that is that here, this first blood is actually so important because of what I just kind of outlined. You have a tempo jungle, which means that he's going to be clearing faster. He should be able to deny camps from Nocturne with Prio, and if Nocturne doesn't get the ability to kind of one-shot off the ground, then Aatrox and LeBlanc are not under threat, because they both have abilities, in LeBlanc's case her passive, in Aatrox's case his ultimate, that keep them from just immediately dying to Nocturne. It's all ends. However, if Nocturne is super far ahead, that doesn't really matter, and you're in a 1v2 scenario anyway if you're in a side lane, so Nocturne is still extremely oppressive against these champions and sides. So you have priority in your bottom lane, you can influence mid lane, you can get priority in the top lane, and you can influence mid lane, and you're just in a really good spot as G2 right now. Here we have UZI backing, but he's only really able to buy this refillable pot, and you have G2 probably going to get better itemization because Hjarnan now has first blood. He's also a few CS over when he backs, which means that there's going to be a situation where UZI has to back again to correct the lane. You basically are in tempo for G2 right now, which means that Wadded is free to do something in the mid lane. He's free to help he's free to help Jankos with invades, he's free to help Perks make Xiaohu stay under turret. Like, Xiaohu cannot walk up here at all, and you're in the situation where obviously you're feeling the effects of this bottom lane first blood already. And there's just not a whole lot that Xiaohu can do. He has to back off of this turret, otherwise he's most likely just going to get dove here. Obviously, that kind of play is really good because you crash the entire wave, you can get some kind of bounce theoretically, you can maybe even end up setting up a freeze for Perk, so there are a lot of really good things about having that pressure, and I believe that first blood actually influenced the mid lane more than you might actually naturally think. Obviously, RNG and G2 make a lot of mistakes playing out this game. I really don't understand why RNG feel the need to keep forcing in so many different situations, why when they do get a force in the bottom lane, they really tunnel on getting that turret instead of moving for the Infernal Drake, for example, because really this game should kind of favor them as it progresses. Obviously, you still have the issue with the Aatrox, but you can kind of deaden a lot of power when you have the Scion able to push the river, join mid. Aatrox can't really push up that much if you get your Nocturne off the ground. Things like this is just so strange overall, the myriad of different decisions that are made by RNG and G2, but there are a lot of cool things that G2 do to just kind of deny certain interactions that happen. Like, for example, you have the force on the top side that was posted onto Reddit where Wadded ends up denying the Lantern, so UZI thinks that he can push up super far in that lane because he has a Thresh Lantern, even though he's not able to get a lot of control in the rest of the map. And then throughout the series, you have Braum on display as someone who just really denies forces, who really denies the ability to clear. And you have the interaction of Braum, which becomes a bit similar to having a ton of wave clear and a Gragas on G2's side, because you just deny something like Sever's Q and suddenly they can't clear the mid section. I didn't want to make this part like super long, but I think it's important to highlight that Balling did good. You know? I mean, it's so hard to say that, and this is going to make me sound like an asshole, but it's so hard to say that people did well this series. But I really do think that G2's bottom lane overperformed to expectations. They did not get run over by UCI every single game, and that ended up making it so that G2's compositions and G2's general style of play could really shine and really stand out. So just hopefully this makes you understand a little bit why I always say that the sidelines are super important, but they can't really function unless you have a really good stable midsection, and that's coming from your jungle, that's coming from your AD carry, and that's coming from your support. So congratulations to G2. I'm probably going to be doing a video on the IG-KT series during the break between quarters and semis, because obviously we have a bit more time. And perhaps in that video we can discuss a little bit some of the expectations for the semifinal.